A gradient from long-term memory to novel cognition transitions through default mode and multiple demand network. Human cognition flexibly guides decision-making in familiar and novel situations. Traditionally, these different aspects of cognition have been ascribed to different neural systems. When the knowledge required by a task is readily available within long-term memory, regions of default mode are assumed to play a role. In the absence of long-term knowledge, decisions are supported by the multiple demand network. However, human cognition is a continuum, not a dichotomy. Most scenarios locate different positions on this continuum. Contemporary accounts of cortical organization suggested intrinsic connectivity and functional organization may change gradually and systematically along the cortical surface. And the following is what they did. They constructed the whole brain functional connectivity matrix. Take the connectivity graph here. The positions of nodes reflect the similarity of connectivity patterns. If the functional connectivity of two nodes are similar, they would be close to each other. Then they applied a dimension reduction technique to capture the maximum variance along several dimensions in this connectivity matrix. They projected these components of connectivity, these dimensions of variance in connectivity patterns. This figure shows two gradients they have found. Regions would occupy similar positions along the gradient if they resemble each other with respect to the connectivity component of interest. The principal gradient, gradient 1, extends between the sensory motor regions and transmodal regions. Our study mainly focuses on the first gradient. The principal gradient also captures the spatial layout of yield 7 networks. Principal gradient values for yield networks show orderly transition, and the gradual transition appears in multiple regions. The principal connectivity gradient offers a view of neural organization in which the relationships between systems are graded rather than dichotomous, with transitions between the networks in multiple cortical zones following the same orderly sequence. Motivated by this view, our study explored this general research question: does this cortical connectivity gradient reflect how decisions change in a graded fashion as support from long-term knowledge changes? We would like to answer these specific questions. If we manipulate long-term semantic similarity parametrically, does the functional recruitment change gradually? Is there a spatial correspondence between the effect of long-term semantic similarity and the principal connectivity gradient? Does the correspondence between the task gradient and connectivity gradient appear in multiple zones? Can we explain the spatial layout of semantic networks in terms of their positions along the task gradient? We created an experimental paradigm in which participants decided whether concepts shared a specific feature, such as color. We manipulate their overall semantic similarity parametrically, creating a spectrum of global similarity. For some trials, nearly all features are shared, such as strawberry and cherry. For some trials, only the task-relevant feature was shared, such as color, tomato, and lipstick. We have two conditions. In one condition, probe and target share similar target-relevant feature. In another condition, probe and target don't share target-relevant feature. We examined the parametric effect of global similarity by including it as a parametric regressor. We refer to the parametric effect of this task manipulation as a task gradient. For matching trials, global similarity rating is higher, the accuracy is higher, and response is faster. For non-matching trials, global similarity rating is higher, the accuracy is lower, and response is slower. Global semantic similarity had different impacts on behavior performance. Consequently, we can compare them to establish whether the functional change along the task gradient reflects the global semantic overlap between probe and target words, or the difficulty of the semantic decision. Semantic similarity would produce parallel task gradient, while difficulty would produce opposite task gradient. We modeled the parametric effect of global feature similarity. This figure shows the estimated effect of the parametric manipulation of global feature overlap. Default mode regions show positive effect of this variable, that is, a stronger bold response when items share more features. Multiple demand regions show negative effect of this variable, that is, a stronger bold response when items share less features. To establish whether there's any correspondence between connectivity gradient and our task gradient, we calculate the correlation of these two maps and found a significant positive correlation across the whole brain. Since we used a semantic task, we wondered whether the correlation would be stronger if we only included regions that are involved in semantic cognition. We defined a semantic mask. We found the correlation is stronger when we only included regions that are involved in semantic cognition. This suggests the relationship between the task gradient and connectivity gradient is to some extent specific to brain regions relevant to semantic cognition. To establish whether functional change along the task gradient reflects the global semantic overlap between the probe and target words, or alternatively, the difficulty of the semantic decision, we repeated the same analysis for non-matching trials, and we found a similar pattern rather than an opposite pattern, suggesting the effects reflect global semantic overlap. We have answered two questions. If we manipulate long-term semantic similarity parametrically, the functional recruitment changes gradually, and there is a spatial correspondence between the effect of long-term semantic similarity and the principal connectivity gradient. And this effect cannot be explained by task difficulty, as matching and non-matching trials show similar pattern. And then we wondered whether the correspondence between the task gradient and the connectivity gradient appear in multiple regions. We anatomically defined 4 regions: left lateral frontal, left medial frontal, left lateral temporal, and left lateral parietal. We found a significant correlation between the task gradient and the connectivity gradient in all these regions. And then to establish if the response to the task gradient systematically changed along the connectivity gradient within the semantic mask, we assigned voxels into 20 bins according to their values on the connectivity gradient. Some bins located towards regions, transmodal regions, while some bins located toward the unimodal regions. We extracted the parameter estimate values of each bin corresponding to the effect of global semantic similarity. We examined whether the task response showed a linear change across these bins, and we found a linear change along the connectivity gradient in the effect of global feature similarity. This indicates the task gradient changed systematically along the connectivity gradient. Transmodal regions show positive parameter estimate. Unimodal regions show negatively parameter estimate. To examine whether the non-matching trials showed a similar pattern or opposite pattern, we repeated the same analysis and found similar patterns. And then we wondered whether we can explain the spatial layout of semantic networks in terms of their positions along the task gradient. We compared the location of semantic control regions with default mode and multiple demand regions, as defined by the localizer tasks. We used the contrast of easy versus hard of spatial working memory task to define default mode. The contrast of hard versus easy of spatial working memory task to define multiple demand. The contrast of hard versus easy of semantic task to define semantic control regions. We observed semantic control regions, green color, is in the middle of default mode and multiple demand, is partly in lateral temporal cortex. Here's the summary. The brain's response to the task gradient varied systematically along the connectivity gradient, with the strongest response in default mode when the probe and target items were highly overlapping conceptually. This graded functional change was seen in multiple brain regions. These effects cannot be readily explained by task difficulty. The gradient captured the spatial layout of networks involved in semantic cognition, providing an organizational principle for controlled semantic cognition across the cortex. Here's the conclusion. Cognition is organized in the brain in a graded fashion. The dichotomy between default mode and multiple demand might represent two ends of a gradient. Semantic tasks recruit both networks and the territory in between, depending on the match between input and long-term memory. I'm very grateful to my supervisors and my collaborators.